GM. We are back. We are live. Welcome back to the SolanaFloor weekly recap, where we break down Solana's biggest stories straight from the SolanaFloor newsroom. I'm joined, of course, as always, by our senior journalist, Finn. GM Finn.
GM Jack, how are we getting on?
We are getting on perfectly. And the one and only Mr. Thomas Bahamas joins us from just across the pond. GM Thomas.
GM, everybody.
All right, now it's been a big week. We often say big week. You see all these posts coming through the timeline, big week, big week. This week was genuinely big. We've got the Solana Foundation doing something it has never done before. Jito's dropping infrastructure that could definitely change how every single trade is executed on Solana. We've got Meta dipping their toes back into crypto. That's one. It's an interesting story. I didn't think we'd be talking about Zuck this week, but this time they're bringing creator payments on Solana with USDC. We've also got a $370 million token burn that definitely pissed a lot of people off. Many people are angry. Plus, we have Solana RWAs, which just hit a new all-time high. The numbers are genuinely staggering, so excited to get into those. Very quickly, though, can we get a quick vibe check from both of you, Finn and Thomas? April is now officially over. It is May, but unfortunately, I have to report that April 2026 was crypto's worst month when it comes to hacks ever since history began. We lost $635 million from across DeFi, Ethereum, Solana, all the hacks, all the exploits, all the social engineering. Now, is it all behind us? How do we feel going into May, Finn?
Yeah, look, first of all, I don't think there's anything to suggest that all these nasty hacks are behind us. You know, the momentum on hacks has actually only accelerated in the last week or so. Is it Anthropic's mythos coming out to hunt all our bags? Is it North Korea being a bit more malicious than usual? I don't know. Yeah, there's nothing to suggest that slows down. But at the same time, I'm feeling a bit more optimistic looking at markets in general. We're seeing accelerating tension in the oil and in the Hormuz Strait and in that whole kind of geopolitical chaos over there. But at the same time, markets are kind of started to stop caring, right? Like I'm looking at crypto prices, they're starting to trend up. Stocks are at all-time highs. Markets in general, they've almost priced in the fact that nothing ever happens as far as taco trades go. So I think we're starting to feel a bit more optimistic about what's going on. Thomas, what's your read?
Yeah, I mean, I can echo that same sentiment, right? It's been a rough month, and it just seems like more news keeps coming out about DeFi protocols getting exploited, and it's brutal to watch. I feel like crypto in general has just really not been looking good this last month. And then the flip side of that, we've been watching the stock market like just go insane, right? You know, all-time highs, everything across the board. It seems like altcoin season, but in stocks right now. So, you know, with where we're at, you know, I think crypto needs a little bit of a rally. Prices don't look like the worst. So, you know, optimistic as always. I think we're going to be just fine, but it's been a rough month.
It has been a rough month. On the bright side, as you both mentioning there, Fridays are often red, and this Friday seems to be doing okay. Prices are relatively flat. So before we get to Finn's newsletter, some of the airdrop frustrations, RWA hitting an all-time high. We've got some hackathon prizes and all the rest. Just a very quick bit of housekeeping here, because last week we reported on and we spoke about Ethereum meme coins briefly overtaking Solana, and it caused a bit of a stir. People were rightly frustrated, asking questions. There's a lot to unpack there, but luckily for us, I think the trenches are sort of back to some extent. That trend is reversing. All is back to normal to some extent. This week, we have Pudgy Penguins, which are up 15% on the week. Fartcoin and Whiff also up 2.5% and 4% respectively. Now, the official Trump meme coin, on the other hand, which we've had plenty to say about, by the way, since the day it launched, is down 20% on the week. So, broad Solana meme category sitting at $3.7 billion total market cap. That's up 1% on the day. Make of the Trump meme coin price action what you will. Things seem to be exactly where they should be. Now, elsewhere in the blue chip meme coin world, though, we do have some big moves. Shiba Inu was finding momentum over the last couple of days. We had one whale move $800 billion in tokens. That's wild. It hasn't been the case for months and months now. Dogecoin is also up 12%. We have some record whale accumulation there. $11.6 billion in Doge is now held by whales, the highest whale concentration that we've ever seen. So people are rightly wondering if this is sort of the beginning of a meme coin revival across the board. Curious to see how that plays out. But quick price check. BTC currently $78,000, up 3% on the day. ETH is at 2.3K and Sol is trading at $84, also about 2% on the day. So not too bad. We expect Fridays to be relatively down or flat, not doing too bad, I have to say. Zooming out though, on the macro front, this is where things get a bit sticky and a bit interesting. The Fed has predictably held rates steady, so still no rate cuts, unfortunately. Curious to see if Kevin Walsh actually does become Fed chair and he lowers rates as is expected. Most economists think that will be his priority if he does become the Fed chair. We had a slightly softer than expected jobs print in the US, so markets are repricing rate cut expectations for the second half of the year. A little bit of uncertainty, as you would expect. People are less risk on than they should be, perhaps. Oil prices spiked again. We touched on that briefly, as I'm sure you're aware of, or maybe you even traded it. And Polymarket, interestingly, gives a 49% chance of crude oil hitting $120 a barrel in May. So let's see how that plays out. Obviously, we don't want oil prices to be elevated for a prolonged period of time because that puts immense economic pressure on the whole world, and that could put us into sort of a tailspin and a global financial meltdown. Nobody wants that. Now, let's zoom into Solana land here, gents. Finn, while I pull your delicious newsletter up on screen in just a second, I do believe, again, that this is the first time we've spoken about Zuck in a long, long time. So what are we looking at? Intro your newsletter as I pull it up, please.
Yeah, he's kind of the fly on the wall, Zuck, isn't he? You know, he's always there, he's always listening, he's always watching, and now we're actually going to draw some attention to him. So, yep, Zuck is dipping his toes back into the stablecoin game 4 years after they wound down Libra or Diem or whatever they decided to rename it to before eventually abandoning the project. They're not launching their own stablecoin, but they're using USDC on Solana and Polygon. So that's very exciting to see. Other biggest stories from this week were obviously Pump's $370 million burn. That came out of absolutely nowhere. I was shocked when I woke up in the morning and I saw the news. Trying to rebuild some faith with the community, rebuild some trust. Unfortunately, that was met with a pretty lukewarm reaction, but we'll dive into that later on. And finally, the story that I think is really most exciting for me is that Jito is reinventing the prop AMM game again. They're building out BAM's first plugin that's gone live, and that's going to effectively give every trader on Solana a better execution. So lots going on. Very, very, very much looking forward to getting into it all.
Absolutely. Now let's dive into story number one in that case. Solana Foundation lends USDT to RWA, first ever cross-chain capital deployment. So this is something that's never happened before. Solana Foundation, for the first time in history, has deployed capital outside the Solana ecosystem to this extent. They've joined DeFi United, which I'm sure you've all heard about following the RWA and Kelp DAO issues. There's about $180 million in bad debt. So bridge exploit, obviously terrible. It was a spoofed RPC, but we don't have to get into the details of how the exploit happened. Finn, let's break down this story.
Yes, so as I'm sure we're all aware by now, terrible hack last week with the Kelp DAO bridge. That ultimately ended up with RWA taking on about $180 million in bad debt. And remarkably, something that's been really heartwarming to see is that DeFi is pulling together to help fill that gap. Teams are joining up with what's being called DeFi United, an initiative to start getting funds back into RWA, resolve the liquidity crunch, and help DeFi basically get back on its feet and keep moving forward. There's been a lot of outpouring of support from teams like EtherFi, Lido, Golem, and even the RWA founder Stani Kulachov has all contributed funds to help get RWA running again. The thing that really stands out here, and the thing that we love to see, is that actually the Solana Foundation is stepping in there as well. So this is the first time that the Solana Foundation is moving funds across chain. They've said that they're going to start lending USDT into RWA to help crypto's biggest lending app get moving again, get back on its feet. And ultimately, Lily, who is the president of the Solana Foundation, has said that we like competition, we compete hard, but if we zoom out, we're all pushing towards the same goal. So really, really awesome initiative for the foundation to be a part of. I think it's great to see. I think uniting DeFi in these very, very difficult times is how we're going to push through this and how we're going to win. And there's a lot more nuance to the story that I think is quite funny. There's a great tweet within that article there. So Lido is giving 2,500 ETH to DeFi United. EtherFi is giving 5,000 ETH. Even the Solana Foundation is stepping forward to lend USDT over to RWA. And the Ethereum Foundation, amidst all this, has finalized terms to sell 10,000 ETH OTC. And they haven't actually acknowledged this hack at all. So well done, Ethereum Foundation, for ensuring that nobody has any faith or trust in you at all. Alongside all the support for RWA, Sunrise, which is an asset gateway platform, has also listed the RWA token on Solana. But it's now fully tradable everywhere across Solana DeFi, and it's been doing some pretty decent volume. So It's good to see that RWA is also bringing their token over to Solana, and that people can get exposure on the chain where all trading happens. Thomas, you've probably got a bit of a cross-chain history in you, I'm sure. Are you thinking that this is an appropriate use of the foundation's treasury, or do you think they should keep all their funds on Solana all the time?
No, I think it's fine. I mean, why not diversify a little bit? You know, when I think about DeFi and I think about, you know, people outside of Solana, Aave is like the #1 DeFi protocol. So anything we can do to help support DeFi as an industry, you know, in its entirety, I think is massive. I think the whole, you know, DeFi United, how they all came together, and I think they plugged the hole of what the entire hack was at this point, right? So I like seeing that. I like that Solana is going after it, and I mean it's Tether too, right? So they're showing like their alignment with Tether versus traditionally it probably would have been USDC. So I like that angle, and I mean, what is the Ethereum Foundation doing at this point? You know, like why why are they selling so much ETH at this exact moment, and why didn't they acknowledge it? So it's interesting. You know, we always talk about like what should the role of a foundation be. I think the role that it shouldn't be is OTCing 10,000 ETH, you know, right after a massive hack like this. So it's interesting to see the two different reactions of them, and it's, you know, people can do whatever they want, I guess, but it's just a interesting, you know, way to look at these. And I mean, I don't know how you really justify what Ethereum's doing at this point, right?
I wonder when I saw the tweet that you were both referencing there with Ethereum Foundation selling when they absolutely should not be selling. I thought maybe this was something that was already in motion, and they just sort of had a lapse in judgment. They thought instead of canceling it, let's just continue as business as usual to maybe not shake confidence, you know, depositor confidence even more. I don't know. I think it has definitely backfired. Selling is never great at that scale, but doing it when they did it, I think really raises some question marks. It's great to see DeFi United, as you both pointed out. Now, plugging the hole is obviously net positive in the immediate term. I'm curious what sort of signals it sends out in the medium to long term. One of the more interesting posts that I saw about this was essentially saying that with all the pledged funds, there's over $100 million already, and a lot more to come. Essentially, KelpDAO's TVL could end up being higher than it was before the hack, which is quite interesting. Point is, there's enough money to go around in DeFi. So as much as we hate to see these hacks and exploits, again, worth mentioning, April saw about $635 million stolen, sadly, from DeFi, across DeFi, multiple chains. So it's worth mentioning that, yeah, DeFi will continue. And I feel that there's more of a sense of a united front against these state-sponsored actors, which are so effectively using social engineering to spoof RPCs, to fake transactions, and take hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars away from DeFi. Okay, story number 2. I feel like we've been talking about hacks for long enough now. Hopefully zero hacks, zero exploits in May. Let's move over to story number 2 here. This is a great one. We love talking about these stories. It is, of course, let's switch over to the newsletter, Jito. Infrastructure. We're moving into a critical infrastructure update here, worth talking about because it impacts almost how every trade is executed. There's been an ongoing discussion. Context here, Jito's BAM is the block assembly marketplace. And essentially what they're aiming to do is to make sure that transactions are ordered efficiently, that blocks are created effectively, and that everyone gets a better price when they're executing Fin. Take it away. Why should we care? Obviously, infrastructure providers and protocols out there are greatly benefiting from this. Why should we care? And what's to come from Jito's BAM update?
Yeah, so we care because ultimately we get better prices when we swap. Solana is already absolutely crushing it in this regard. Jump published a paper just, I think, a few weeks ago where they mentioned that in 99.3% of cases, on-chain Solana swaps are actually better than retail tier centralized exchange trades. That's not enough. That's not good enough, Jito said. Jito's come out and they said, let's make that even better. Let's further accelerate trade execution on Solana. And this BAM plugin, this very first BAM plugin, by the way, is going to take us a lot closer to doing that. So if we look at this graph here, this basically outlines the current landscape of what it looks like at a micro market structure level. So each of these 4 panels represents a different scheduler. And each of these different bars represents where prop AMM transactions are landing within a slot. So a slot is about 400 milliseconds, and depending on which scheduler is the leader, market makers don't know where their transactions are going to land within that. So within that 400 millisecond slot, that creates a whole lot of uncertainty and unpredictability, which ultimately market makers don't want. Market makers want to know that their transactions are going to go through, that they're going to land at the right time, and that effectively they're not going to be sniped off by malicious taker orders. Now, with this new plugin, BAM is the BAM Maker plugin is effectively breaking that down. We're going to, instead of going over a 400 millisecond slot time, it's breaking it down and it's executing transactions in 50 millisecond batches. And makers actually have priority in here. So the BAM plugin effectively gives them a prioritized lane, which means that they can cancel orders, they can move quotes, they can update their quotes to more accurate prices at a far greater speed than what takers can do, and they have priority over that as well. So we've gone from a circumstance where makers have very little control over the 400 millisecond slot time. We're going away from an environment where they have very little oversight and predictability over what's going on. And we're moving towards a market structure where they can update their quotes extremely efficiently. They don't need to waste huge amounts of compute updating these quotes, and they know that it's going to land. So very, very exciting. What that means for us at the end of the day is that market makers can tighten up their quotes. They're no longer facing the risk of getting picked off by aggressive takers, by malicious takers. They can tighten the quotes down into 50 millisecond tranches. We get better spreads, we get tighter quotes, and effectively we get better execution on every single trade that goes through Solana. And ultimately, validators who are running BAM also get a slight revenue boost from this. So I love this story because it's one circumstance in which everybody on Solana wins by this going out. So very, very exciting. Thomas, I know it sounds like it's a very, very technical and complicated thing. Are we getting overexcited over what is going to be a small bump in the long term over how transactions go through and how transactions get executed?
You know, I think that this is huge for us, right? You know, like as a user, you could see the spread, right? You know, you set up a swap, you see the quotes, and then if you get a different amount back after, you know, this is basically solving that issue. And I think there was a study that came out where it said, yeah, there are a good amount of trades, you're getting quoted one price, and because that price actually gets stale, you don't get that price. So to solve that problem is fantastic for everybody involved. And I mean, us as the users, we're like the main winner here, right? Solana's already, what was it, 99.3% better than, you know, centralized exchanges at this point. This is just going to take it that much further. I mean, I don't know why you would really want to swap anywhere else. And you can see this in the order books too, right? You know, I see massive transactions go through. Like I follow a Telegram where it's like big transactions get posted on there, and you'll see people are trading other chains coins in significant size on Solana because of this. So this is making, you know, a big impact. And I mean, shout out to Jito, because this is, you know, that was becoming an issue where, you know, we had prop AMMs, they had the potential to give amazing swaps, but they couldn't quite do it because of the structure of the quotes, right? So I don't know. This is a win. I don't know what else you want to say about it.
Yeah, look, so it's worth mentioning here that a quick disclaimer, which I should have given already, SolanaFloor is a part of the Jito network following our acquisition earlier on in the year. But regardless of that, we've been covering Solana's perp scene for a long, long time now, how we're in many respects behind the leaders, which are, you know, Hyperliquid. And Thomas and I also covered this in the video department. Specifically, we talked a lot about Chase's 5,500 word essay about all the different areas that Solana needs to improve. And this story strikes straight to the heart of one of them. I'm going to pull up the newsletter here, Finn, because you put a TLDR at the end of this story. And I think it's very powerful and it speaks volumes. TLDR is that Jito's first BAM plugin gives market makers a better landscape for quoting prices. You, dear trader, get tighter spreads and better execution, and validators running BAM get an additional revenue stream. So it sounds like a win-win. I think that's sort of the be-all and end-all of it. And it's also worth noting that Rebecca Rettig, we spoke to her at Breakpoint during our live stream there. She called this a meaningful answer to whether Solana's infrastructure can support how institutional participants actually operate. And we talk a lot about Solana's sort of process of becoming more and more mature, moving away from some of the not so nice labels, like that it was a meme coin casino, and this is absolutely critical as far as the infrastructure and the progress around it goes. So definitely not nothing. Any final thoughts on how we as individuals might be interacting with Solana when it comes to trading there, Finn? Anything that's maybe not quite as clear? I know the final section of your article here sort of touches on what that means going forward as well. I think, yeah, it says plugins to boost validator revenue on 28% of Solana stake. What are we missing here?
Yeah, so the 28% of Solana stake there effectively applies to everyone who's running the Jito BAM validator client. It's 28% of stake. It's actually around 47% of all validators, I think, at the moment. The last time I checked, there was around 347 validators running BAM. So if you are one of those validators, you are going to get a slight revenue bump from this. And look, I don't know how much it's going to be, right? There's calculations you can run that can estimate what it's going to be, but effectively prop AMM transactions are very much contributing a huge amount of the total flow of what's going on Solana. So I think anyone who is staking to these BAM validators is going to get a nice little boost. We'll be happy to see that. And ultimately, again, for me and you, this just means that our trades are even better. We're already 99% better than Binance. This is going to give us a few extra percentage points there and make Solana continue to be the best place to trade spot assets in the entire internet. So very, very exciting. Well done, Jito, for making this happen.
All right, this next one, I have to say, it made me laugh. Perhaps it shouldn't. It made me laugh. People are frustrated, but people are always frustrated. So a bit of a saga here. Headline, as you can see, $370 million pump burn backfires as users mourn missing airdrop. Banger headline from Finn, as always. Let's take a second here. Pump.fun went ahead and burnt $370 million worth of pump tokens in a week. That's 123 billion tokens in total. 36% of circulating supply just gone. And somehow the entire community is furious, bar maybe a few people that are trying to sort of find the silver lining. Finn, talk me through the nuances here. Are we missing anything other than frustrations around airdrop expectations? What's going on? Why are people so angry all the time?
People are so angry all the time because they've been hounding this idea of getting an airdrop that has never come. So for context, back in July when Pump first launched the token, the announcement tweet had a small little clause that said airdrop coming soon. So people obviously got very, very excited. People have been spending months and months trading huge amounts of money on Pump. So everybody was ready to get this big juicy airdrop. Now that has never arrived. And since then, Pump has been allocating 100% of all its revenue to buying back Pump, which, as the chart would show, hasn't been that effective, but here we have it. We've got $370 million of Pump that has been bought back in this fashion. And Pump woke up this morning and they said, you know what? Burn it all. Let's destroy it. It doesn't exist. That has removed 36% of the current circulating supply. And look, they did it to reestablish trust. They wanted to show people that they want Pump to grow in value. They want to pick up the token and put it on its back and start sending it back into green territory. But people have called this a flagrant misuse of those funds. A lot of people were saying, why didn't you just send out that airdrop to us instead? It has fallen pretty flat, I think, Pump's plan. And the other side of this is that where they used to be allocating 100% of protocol revenue to buybacks for the protocol, they're actually moving that back to 50%. So Alan has said that the 50-50 split is so that the app will continue to have strong revenue generation moving forward. Eleanor says they need that extra 50% revenue to help the app actually grow properly, and I'm inclined to agree. Like, obviously Pump's got a huge war chest worth, 1-2 billion. At the same time, they need cash flow, they need revenue to keep coming in, they need to be able to keep using that to grow sustainably. They can't just burn through the treasury to try and make the token go up. That's not a sustainable way of operating at all. But look, people are upset. They thought they were going to get an airdrop one day. They didn't. And they just heard that the company who was meant to give that to them has just burned $370 million. So I can understand the frustration, but I do have some sympathies for Pump.fun here, which I can talk about in a bit. But Thomas, I'm going to throw it to you. Do you think this is an overreaction? Do you think that this is a fair frustration from the airdrop trench dwellers?
Okay, so farmers are furious, right? And people were farming this as an airdrop too, right? There definitely were some hints on it, but I think that this is kind of the cross between like two pretty big narratives that we have in crypto, like tokenomics. What do you do with the token? What do you do when you make a bunch of revenue? So I think that this is an interesting case to be looking at, right? They they have been buying back their token at an insane rate. I think 100% of revenue up until this point. And they bought back, 36% um, of the entire supply. So, they had a bunch of supply. People were, making conspiracy theories about what they're going to do, why they have it, and all this. So I think that by burning it, not only are they taking those off the table, they're kind of like building trust in the token, I think. And, obviously short term people are going to be, questioning this, but I think in the long term, when we look back at this, I think it's the right move. Um, and I guess different protocols have different ways to do this, and maybe it's not the right thing for everyone to do. But I mean, they're one of the top revenue making protocols in all of crypto right now.
Yep.
So for them to go out and do this, I think it's big. Um, and I'm a little bullish on meme coins right now when it comes down to it, right? All these DeFi hacks, all these custodians with your funds are having issues. And it's like, what if we just get back to self custody where you hold your meme coins? There's there are risks associated with them, of course, but like you can monitor those risks a lot easier by looking at transactions, looking at holder counts, trying to understand what wallets own what. I feel like that those risks are like a lot less than trying to understand who owns a multi-sig. So I think that there could be a shift back. And I mean, even NFTs fall into that category as well, where, I don't want to be, if I look at like allocating funds right now, I'm not buying into DeFi protocols, I'm not lending. And, meme coins are kind of fun, some of them are like a lottery ticket, but I feel like there's something there that's I don't know. It kind of feels like they're ramping up a little bit. We saw a little bit more volume come in. So I'm kind of excited about this. I think that Pump's making the right moves. They're going to continue to buy back. I think it's 50% of the revenue moving forward, and they make a ton of revenue, right? Like they're durable. These coins have been around. They're launching a lot. Sure, the other side is saying there's too many coins, it's saturated, but the other side of that is people keep making them. Like
Now,
the revenue speaks for itself at this point.
it does, but in the interest of balance, I think we have to address this this post that's on screen here. Curious what you guys think, but I'm really curious what our listeners think about this as well. If you're listening to this, do you feel that this is a valid angle? Or, I mean, my gut reaction for transparency is that you're never going to make everyone happy, but this is specifically singling out groups and trying to make them happy, potentially at the cost of an even larger group of users. So Post says they could have given the top 10,000 users $37,000 each. They could have given the top 100,000 users $3,700 each, but no, they just burned $370 million. I think it's a reasonable outburst. Let's call it frustration. I'm curious what our listeners think. Yeah, again, my gut reaction is if you go ahead with this type of strategy, you're just alienating other users and maybe even creating friction between user groups. I'm not sure. What's your gut reaction to seeing this post, guys?
Look, there's a lot of nuance here, right? I kind of agree in the sense that if you say you're going to do an airdrop, you have to do an airdrop.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think Pump is almost held hostage by a group of extremely frustrated users who are never going to be happy. And even when they finally get that airdrop, I think they're just going to rage dump it in pure frustration. So, look, I think the Pump airdrop is kind of hanging over their heads like a Damocles sword at the moment. Doomed if you do, doomed if you don't. They need to rip that Band-Aid off somehow. I don't know what their strategy is, but I think, yeah, they need to address this. And that way they can at least appease all of these people who are coming after them every single day and telling them to give airdrop, essentially. Thomas, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, if they did the airdrop right now, everyone would just dump it, right? I don't see that as like a good strategy for running this. And I mean, they've done a lot of work on their token, right? I feel like they just put $370 million into the token, basically, if you could look at it that way, right? So historically, the holders of meme coins on Solana have a record for short-term holding. It's seconds, it's minutes, it's hours. They're not thinking about years. Where I know that they've raised funds for their token, right? They had an ICO for their token, so that they have a lot invested in their token doing well. The other side of that is the users were promised an airdrop. So I don't know where I fall. You know, I want to see the token do well, and I want to see the users be happy and get an airdrop. I don't know how you do that in this climate right now.
It's a sticky one. It's definitely a sticky one. I think people are going to be pissed off with whatever outcome is sort of necessary. I think it's going to come down to what's necessary rather than what would we like to do, because it's always a trade-off of how many people can we afford to frustrate here. And the main issue that I see is that every day you wait is another day of ammo for these frustrated airdrop expecting individuals out there. So I think the TLDR is doomed if you do, doomed if you don't, as Finn said, is the sort of is the crux of it. And we will absolutely be continuing to cover not just meme coins, but also Pump's decisions, Pump's airdrop strategy going forward. It's going to be quite an interesting story, I'm sure. Now,
Jack, I do want to jump in, sorry, very quickly, because there's something very interesting we didn't touch on in this story. And if you scroll back, actually in the newsletter, if you just go up a wee bit, we've got this chart here of the Pump unlocks and the unlock schedule. This was one of the things that people did bring up alongside these burns. They said the only reason that Pump is doing this is so they can artificially inflate the value of Pump before these unlocks begin in July. So that's 2 months away at this stage. And the cliff is massive. Admittedly, the cliff is absolutely huge. The team and existing investors who, the likes of who got an extreme low valuation are getting their tokens at this stage. But I want to go on the record. I want to say that I think Pump is actually going to ride this out pretty well. So even if they drop their revenue by 50% and start sending that to the token, they're still actually going to be earning enough to buy out these investors as these tokens get vested. So yes, it's an extremely alarming curve. I don't think that Pump necessarily did this to inflate the value ahead of these unlocks, because all these VCs, they can actually hedge these positions using short perps in the lead up as well. So it's almost as if these tokens are already unlocked, because there are ways, the markets are so efficient that these investors can actually have already hedged them. So look, don't hate Pump too much for upcoming unlocks. The revenue is going to cover it. The revenue is going to cover these emissions. And I think the unlock's going to have less of an impact than people say, but we'll see.
Interesting. If we had the option, I would be spamming the crystal ball emoji here. Finn has a way of coming out with these predictions that often play out, sometimes quicker, sometimes slower than anticipated. But I'm going to go ahead and bow to your crystal ball senses with that one. If any of our listeners disagree, if you think, for instance, that no, this is clearly a way to artificially inflate the price in the short term and maybe help with absorbing some of that, some of those emissions, some of those unlocks, curious what you think. Curious, let us know. Let us know why you're angry. Always curious to see. TB, final thoughts on Pump. Bullish in the short term?
Yeah, I'd say bullish on the short term. I just feel like like we need to get past April. Well, I don't want to think about DeFi anymore, and I feel like meme coins, it's like where retail is, right? Like there is still some fun there. I think that we've seen like a lot of like the dark side of the trenches, and I want the trenchers to win. I'm hoping for May is going to be good for the trenches.
Fingers crossed. Okay, now our next headline is Solana Mobile names Monolith Hackathon winners, distributes $125,000 in prizes. This one is absolutely massive. It's for the builders. It's for the Solana Mobile seeker enjoyers. I've got mine here somewhere. Let's see where it is. We use these things. It's great. But what's even greater is when the Solana Mobile team turns around and says, you know what, we're going to give you $125,000 in prizes. Submit great dApps that people want to use every day and contribute positively to the ecosystem. That's exactly what's happened. The submission amount is over 400 now. That's a 44% growth. Personally, I can't wait to test some of these winners out. Finn, you've written a great article here going into detail about what's happening, why it's happening, who's won. So I'm curious what your sort of takeaway is in terms of, what are the winners and what stands out to you?
Well, there's an alarming trend, not an alarming trend, a very exciting trend that's popped out through the course of this Monolith Hackathon. And that is that a lot of the winners fall into one of two categories, and that is either prediction markets or yield generating apps. So
shock horror. Shock horror. We need to fix yield on DeFi after that horrible April month.
Well, look, maybe some of these apps are the ones to do it, right? Maybe there's some better security features in place on some of these that will actually help people keep their funds safe on chain. But look, ultimately, we've got 10 grand winners. We can roll through them very, very quickly. The top of the list, well, not top of the list. This isn't hierarchical. There's no kind of 1 to 10 on this. But look, we've got Tramplin, Backyard Finance, Cashflow, PredictTalk, Q, 4C, Seeker Claw, Nomi, Pumpville, Echo Protocol, and Seek was the winner of the SKR track, which is basically an AI-powered scavenger hunt app, which does sound like a lot of fun. There was also 5 honorable mentions who went away with, I believe, $5,000 in winnings. That's Cherry, Time Bent, Kicker, Kinlog, and the Hunters of Feynora. So a whole bunch of great new apps in the Solana App Store. All of these apps are getting streamlined straight there. As you mentioned, Jack, we've got over 400 submissions for this, 44% more than the previous hackathon. Developers and builders were applying from 10 countries for this. So look, it's a great time to be building on Seeker. Essentially, there's
Finn, I've got a bone to pick with you.
Go on.
I'm not very happy about the wording of this. See what it says here, Kicker, a soccer trading app. What is soccer? What is that? You mean football?
Yeah, yep. Well given. I think we're catering to an American audience here, but I'm
gonna let you off for the sake of our listeners. I'm gonna let you off, but
sounds good to me.
Frustrates me.
TBC's no problem.
Yeah.
So what else? This is closing what has been an incredible Q1 for Seeker. As we've seen, the number of dApps launched in the Seeker dApp Store absolutely rocketed in Q1. That's just proving the thesis that the SKR flywheel is spinning. It is working. People are getting inspired. People are getting incentivized, and people are building new apps for the crypto mobile economy. So I think it's fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing the next one. Guys, having looked through this list, what is standing out to you? What's your favorite? Thomas, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm super pumped about the whole Seeker ecosystem. I feel like the amount of like builder energy that's going on there, and I feel like everybody in that whole ecosystem is like very positive. They're using a lot of these apps a lot. So first of all, excited about that. But I'm like an Echo protocol. It's kind of one that I keep coming back to. It's, a solo dev that shipped it, and it's like geotag reward systems. It's live across like 34 cities, and I think it's pretty interesting, right? I go do some rewards, some in real life Seeker rewards, and maybe meet up with some other Seeker people. I like it. What are you guys thinking?
Well, call me a cop out here, but I'm gonna do the classic combining 2 answers into one, because it's difficult to pick favorites, which is obviously why they have a bunch of winners and then a bunch of honorable mentions, right? Even the judges struggle to decide which is the best across all these categories. So I'm going to go ahead and say both Backyard and Cashflow. And the reason is April, as we just spoke about, and as we have been speaking about for a whole month, has been an absolutely devastating month for DeFi. And I feel that one of the core offerings of DeFi is to be able to decide based on your own risk appetite, your own investment time horizon, what type of yield you're comfortable underwriting the risk of. So Cashflow and Backyard Finance are essentially giving people tools to go out there and say, we've sort of emerged slightly victorious thanks to Tether having lost some funds from Drift and the 20 other protocols that were indirectly impacted by that. And now we can sort of decide for ourselves what type of risk appetite we have, how we're going to get yield on chain through Solana DeFi. So I'm going to combine those two. And there's, of course, some SKR staking unlocks as well. We love to see all of those. For our audience members, if you do want to find a much more comprehensive list of perks and Seeker dApps and the rewards that you can get for using these dApps, then you can go to SolanaFloor.com. We do have a Seeker hub, and you'll see a long list, a table actually, of all the perks, existing perks and rewards you can get for using those. Finn, ball's back in your court. Which one's your favorite?
I'm going to go with Tramplin, to be honest. Tramplin, for me, non-custodial staking program with gamified rewards. Honestly, for me, this feels a bit like OR for Solana stakers. Maybe that's a terrible one-liner that they don't want me to use at all. But look, Tramplin lets people who have small amounts of stakes still win big on a gamified system every 10 minutes. So look, I think it's fun. It makes staking a bit more interesting than just depositing your tokens and then waiting for years and years for that yield to generate. Look, it's fun. I think it's creative, and yeah, it's going to be Tramplin for me.
Interesting. It's definitely introducing a gambling element to it without. It's like slots, but you don't have to pull the lever. Is what I feel like.
Hands-free gambling,
which is exactly what we need. Okay, story number 5, gents. I know I said this earlier. I'm going to say it again. I did not feel that we'd be talking about Zuck for a long, long time. Here we are. Zuck has made some decisions in the past that has cost Meta billions and billions. They had, I want to say 60 billion or something expected losses around their metaverse investments. As you mentioned, Finn, there, they had a couple of payments projects, stablecoins projects that ended up being sunset. Here we are. Meta rolls out USDC payments for creators on Solana. Could be huge. It could be a nothing burger. Finn, how big is this?
Look, it's not, big for me in the immediate climate, but it could be very, very big for a huge amount of people elsewhere in the world. So Meta is rolling out USDC payments for creators on Solana in Colombia and in the Philippines right now. Perhaps that expands in the future. And this wasn't something that came out in some big glitzy announcement. This literally got updated in the Meta Business Help Center. And some people found it and blew it up and turned it into the news it is today. Now, this creator payout system is going to be running on Solana and Polygon. And look, this is what's fascinating to me is that, Circle is working very hard to get Tempo up and running, a stablecoin payments focused chain, and that's nowhere to be seen in this. So I don't know what's going on behind closed doors at Meta. I don't know if they just took the path of least resistance and someone told them, look, use Solana, use Polygon. That's going to be the easy way to do it. But ultimately, USDC has been chosen. Solana and Polygon has been chosen. Meta is the big tech giant. They've created the social media empire. It's one of the biggest companies in the world. And for them, they've gone, you know what, Solana, Polygon, USDC, that is how we're going to distribute value to people in emerging economies across the world. So look, maybe it's the first step in what becomes the beginning of a very, very big Meta payment system using Solana. I don't know. Thomas, what's your knee-jerk reaction to this?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's, stable coins are taking over. I saw a really good tweet on this that the worst Instagram influencer is more bullish crypto than the average crypto Twitter participant.
Sure,
I actually made that tweet. That was me. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, it's exciting. I know that those Instagram influencers make a lot of money. So they promote their teas or whatever, and they get paid. Why not get paid out in stable coins? So, and I think that is, that's kind of the cross-border payments as well, where it's like crypto is perfect for that. And yeah, it is interesting that Tempo was not in there, but I mean, Tempo also just came out like a month ago or so. So maybe it was just too early, but I mean, we've seen the numbers when it comes to stable coins on Solana, like it's absolutely crushing. So I don't think you can avoid using Solana when it comes to something like this. If you're seeing the amount of usage, and we've had years of usage on Solana in general, right? So when you look at it like comparatively, it would make sense to me to choose Solana, but they also chose Polygon a little bit too. So we'll see how it goes.
They did. I mean, it makes sense to sort of not put all of your eggs in the same basket, I suppose, right? And I don't imagine Zuck's got a huge amount of time to sit and make these decisions. I would imagine there's a huge delegation of responsibility there, and they probably thought, let's sort of split the risk in some sense. Worth mentioning, you touched on USDC there, Thomas. Circle USDC does still have 52% dominance on Solana. We discussed 3 weeks ago by now to what extent we think that dominance would decline. It has declined a lot less than I expected it to do so. I think Finn's
actually
estimation was sort of spot on there. But it is worth mentioning that 22.6% USDT supply growth on Solana over the last 30 days is a direct result of Tether's decision to go and basically launch a rescue mission after the drift hack. So that's something I suspect that trend will continue. We'll probably see more USDT reliance on Solana in the next 30 days than we did in the last 30 days. And that's probably going to continue. Now, Finn, there's an interesting thing in this article. 28 million Shinhan card users. So that's South Korea's leading issuer. And they're exploring hybrid finance with Solana Foundation. What do we have here?
Yep, that is correct. So this was kind of announced as a completely separate entity, but I've kind of looped it together in this the stablecoin wrap up. So yeah, South Korea's leading card issuer with 28 million users has signed a MOU with the Solana Foundation. They are exploring how they can start using interacting Solana with their product suite. It's an MOU, so it's we haven't got some live products out there now that are going to change the world, but it's a declaration of intention. For me, this shows that South Korea, one of the most exciting emerging economies. It's not even an emerging economy, but it's actually going for it in recent times. The Korean stock market is on the verge of a big blitz, so they say. Look, they're exploring Solana. They want hybrid finance models. They want to combine TradFi's reliability with DeFi's efficiency and transparency. So I'm curious to see what happens there, and we'll be keeping an eye on South Korean markets to see how ingratiated they go with Solana in the future.
Bullish South Korea.
Bullish South Korea.
All right. Now, before we get to my favorite part of Finn's newsletter, which, as you know by now, is the honorable mention section, the stat of the week, and the state of Solana in a tweet, we have story number 6 here. Now, this is a banging little report by our very own Pablo, great journalist. So shout out to Pablo. I have to say, this story gets me excited, right? So the headline is Solana RWA ecosystem hits $2.5 billion all-time high across over 200,000 users. I mean, the immediate conclusion here is that the total RWA value is 10x'd on Solana in a year. We have on-chain stonks, we have on-chain metals, on-chain credit, on-chain reinsurance, the whole shebang. Let's make sure I'm showing the right article here as well. You can see the charts, the stats to yourself. So again, shout out to Pablo. But remember, just 12 months ago, I know it's felt like a very long, painful year in crypto. We were reporting that the Solana RWA ecosystem was worth around $200 million. Again, we've 10x'd in 12 months. Finn, why do we love this news? Why is it really important? What's driving the change? I suppose that's an interesting angle. And TB, I'm curious if our RWA exposure is roughly in line with the top holdings that we're going to see in Pablo's article as well.
Look, RWAs are on an absolute tear. It's been one of the biggest stories of the past year. Like you say, this time a year ago, we were at $215 million in market size, and now that's 2.5 billion. So absolutely astronomical growth in these real world assets. A lot of that, I think, and why that's so popular on Solana is that they are composed within lending markets. So this is something that you don't see a whole lot of on Ethereum. On Solana, it's pretty much table stakes at this point, right? You need to be integrated in Camino and Loopscale. You need to be operating leveraged loops to help these assets grow. If you can get yield on these quite stable assets through reinsurance, through all those things you're talking about, why not leverage that up? Why not borrow against that to really maximize that yield? We can see here in this graph, Solana has 58% of RWA lending deposits, which is remarkable when you weigh up the size of Ethereum's RWA market with the size of Solana's RWA market. So look, there's a good stat towards the bottom of Pablo's article here. About 43.7% of Solana's active RWA market cap is utilized within DeFi, compared with 6.1% on Ethereum. So look, if you want to park your RWAs on-chain, go to Ethereum. If you want to put them in the hands of users who are going to be borrowing against them, trading them, send them to Solana, and that's where you're going to find real activity and real usage. So very, very exciting. Thomas, what's your knee-jerk reaction to these capital concentration and leading assets? Are you surprised to see Buildle there at the top, or to see Prime there at the top?
You know, I'm not surprised. They've kind of been towards the top for a while now. I love that RWAs are becoming more of a thing in general, right? Like, as we saw, crypto is not ripping, in the last month. So the last few months, right? So stocks have been, and now you can diversify in your wallet, right? I think my fear on this would be is that we get all these like equities and stocks and everything on chain, and then they top, and then crypto rips, and we don't, people don't have like access to it, or they don't have exposure to it. But as James Seyffert said on The Big Picture, the top buyers of the stock market have done pretty great historically. So I like that we have that. Like I own quite a bit of stocks on chain now. And I think it's great. I mean, I wasn't actually like aware of just how many different offerings they have now, right? Like Ondo came to Solana, and they brought a lot of stocks as well. So there is like a big offering now. I mean, with them combined with X stocks and pre stocks, like you have like a really like potential, like a good potential to fully diversify on chain if you wanted to. And something else that I was looking at too. I don't know if you guys saw Sesto, but they do like baskets of, they have like different baskets that are hilarious, but they're also like pretty great baskets of stocks.
I love Sesto. Honestly, yeah, whoever came up with that idea of creating those baskets, I think has done an incredible job at curating them. The UI is super simple. If you want to be long AI, you can do that in one click. You can be long Google, for example. You can be long US stocks. You can do defense in there. There's stablecoin exposure. So I think it's a really good way of bundling different on-chain assets together. And I suspect they're going to be doing very, very well. Just sorry to cut you off there. This is something that I wasn't even aware of, guys. Pre-SPACs. Now, if you were around and investing or aping into, I should say, random SPACs between 2019 and 2023, you probably lost a lot of money, if not all of it. But pre-SPACs, is this sort of pre-stocks but different?
This is pre-stocks from a different provider. So I probably shouldn't say that. It's pre-IPO trading instruments from a different provider to pre-stock. So this is powered by Republic. Yeah, they've actually managed to get a huge amount of value there. They've got a strong TVL. Yeah, that one did kind of, I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, but I think pre-stocks is kind of settled in and established as the cultural zeitgeist of what pre-IPO trading is for Solana.
Yeah.
So that's probably why, despite Republic having a much larger TVL on this, we don't actually see them talked about as much.
Interesting. If our listeners do know of any pre-SPACs that we should be keeping an eye on, do let us know. Again, it's taken me by surprise. I was not aware of it. I think we're too focused on things like Sesto and buckets. And you mentioned we were talking to James Safart there. He thinks also among the traditional investors that are looking for on-chain exposure, basket-type products are really going to be getting huge amounts of attention over the next 10 years, because why not outsource some of the research when it comes to your allocation strategy to people who do this all day, every day, right? Certainly if I'm going into a new investment category, I'm going to find someone who I think is an expert, who I perceive to be an expert. Unfortunately for me, between 2019 and 2022, let's say, that guy was Chamath, and I lost a bunch of money aping into SPACs. So hopefully your investment history with SPACs has been better than mine. Special purpose acquisition vehicles. Let's see how this plays out. Any thoughts on other options on this list, Thomas? Anything that stands out? Anything surprising you here?
All right. So with the pre-SPACs, let's say Chamath raised another fund for more SPACs, right? So with these pre-SPACs, can you ride it up with him and then dump before it actually goes live and it goes to zero? Like, is that what it's going to give us the ability to do?
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. Although it does beg the question, somebody, even in that scenario, some unsuspecting victim is going to end up being the exit liquidity. And I think overall, that's not necessarily a net positive look for the industry. So I'm probably going to be very, very cautious with SPACs and pre-SPACs in general. But we discussed this a couple of weeks ago. Private companies, pre-IPO, these are some of the most asymmetric bets you can take as far as wealth creation opportunities. Unfortunately, they're typically gated to accredited investors, professional investors. And now as a degen through your crypto wallet, through your Solana wallet, you can go and get exposure to these things. Very risky, but if it pays off, it can pay off massively. That's sort of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'd agree.
All righty. Now, are we excited? I've been waiting for this moment since we started the stream. We are getting into section number 7, which is, as we all know, the honorable mention section. Switching over to the tab now. Finn, do you want to run us through these honorable mentions? Then let's talk about which ones sort of stand out to us. And I'm curious this week why one of these stories didn't make it into your 6 stories for the newsletter itself. Let's go.
This is one of my favorite lists of honorable mentions that we've had for a while, so let's rip into it. Top of the list, Exponent raises $5 million in seed round funding from Multicoin Capital. Humidify launches Aquarium, a public on-chain market-making program. Solana ETFs record $4 million in monthly net flows in April, and that marks, I believe, 7 straight months of positive inflows. So institutional players, they cannot stop pouring funds into Solana ETFs. Very bullish. Loopscale and Collector Crypt enable collateralization of selected TCG cards. Zeus Network gets acquired by A-Starter, a Cardano-based DEX.
What?
Pump.fun launches charity coins, directing fees directly to charity via donate.gg. Squads raises 18 million in a strategic round led by Solana Ventures. Jump and Anza tip Falcon as Solana's solution to the quantum threat. And Axiom cracks 400 million in cumulative revenue. Thomas Bahamas, what's standing out?
All right, so I've got 2 of them. So first, Sol ETF that volume ramping up is getting me pumped up. Come on, let's go. We need a little bit more of that. And then next, I'm gonna pick Quantum. So with Falcon coming out, I actually pitched doing a video about Quantum because I wanted to learn more about it. And it turns out that Jack has already written a full script. Coming soon, Jack is going to be releasing a Quantum video. And I feel like nobody really knows about Quantum. They just hear that it's going to attack Bitcoin and it's scaring people away. So I feel like it needs to be.
That's sort of the issue here as well, right? I feel like we end up covering a story and then everyone thinks, oh, we've become quantum experts. That is not the case. It is a very heady subject, so many different angles, so many different algorithms and potential threats for cryptography, for blockchain. However, I will foreshadow the conclusion of that video is that this is nothing new, right? People are now talking about it because all of a sudden Google came out with this report and said quantum is basically going to destroy crypto by 2029. Don't worry, if you're listening to this, we've been having this same conversation for well over 6 years now. People are aware of it. People who are far smarter than us and actually deal with cryptography every day in their lives. So solutions are being worked on, but risks, of course, do exist. So interesting that you went for the quantum one. Finn, my question for you is why didn't you end up incorporating Loopscale into the newsletter itself? As a lover of Loopscale, I would have expected either for it to be at the top of the honorable mentions list or in the news itself. What's going on?
First of all, the honorable mentions is not hierarchical. They're not one numbered 1 through 10. One mention does not rank higher than any others. Second, I think this actually came out at the end of yesterday or early this morning. And by that point, we don't have a story written for it. So if the story isn't written on the SolanaFloor website, it's not going into the top of 1 6 stories. Yeah, but look, it is a very, very cool, very cool step forward. I think one of the things that's been holding TCGs back in this respect is that, yes, you can trade them, but you can't do anything more than that. If you can start borrowing against your extremely highly valued TCG cards, that I think gives you kind of a cushion in case they do nuke one day, which, could happen. And B, it just actually lets you use your wealth a lot more effectively on chain, even if it is baseball cards or Pokemon cards or whatever TCGs you've got. So yeah, look, the loop scale thing is very exciting. I think it's a great step forward. It's not my favorite honorable mention though.
Drum roll.
My favorite is Exponent raising $5 million in seed round funding from Multicoin. I love Exponent. I think it's a brilliant app. I think yield trading is such a massive paradigm that we on Solana don't do and we don't care about. I think more people should be using apps like this. I think there's a whole lot of DeFi innovation that can be explored there. It's really, really big on Ethereum. There's no reason it shouldn't be really big on Solana. And yeah, Exponent is pioneering that charge forward. So well done, Exponent, on your $5 million round.
Excellent. Now let's move on. Oh, the thumbnail that you're seeing here on screen is about Trump family's, I should say, largest crypto company, World Liberty Financial, which got hit with a massive lawsuit by Justin's son, who is suing them for about $75 million in federal courts in the US because they blacklisted his wallet and they froze his tokens. Super interesting story. A bit of a tabloid investigation here. So if you're interested in what that means for crypto and how Democrats are essentially using that as leverage against Trump and unfortunately the entire crypto industry, this is a very interesting video. You can go and watch that. Finn, stat of the week. What do we have here?
Right. So as we all know, April was the worst month on record by the number of hacks. As a result of that, we have seen a bit of deposit flight across DeFi, across Solana DeFi, massive liquidity crunch. Nobody wants to keep their funds on chain. But evidently, nobody told Sanctum. So on Solana, Sanctum was the only protocol among the top 4 by TVL to grow in both Sol and USD denominations. So with TVL up 2.47% in Sol and 4.76% in USD. So well done, Sanctum. Honestly,
what do we think? What do we think is driving that? So if everyone is struggling across the board and Sanctum is seeing a rise in TVL, what is it? Is it the really cute emblem that they had? What's it called? The mascot? I'm forgetting his name now. Is it Andre or something really cute? Is that what's driving this TVL growth, or is it because Sanctum's one of the the largest and oldest and most trusted liquid staking providers on Solana?
I don't think that branding is what's winning them this race. I think people are scared of overcomplication, and I think people want a return to simplicity. And in many respects, Sanctum offers that. Sanctum lets people shift their Sol into INF. They get the best LST staking rate available on the market. And it also diversifies into the other white labeled liquid staking tokens. So I think the simplest way to explain is that people don't want to be in lending protocols. They don't want to be kind of expanding things as much as possible. They want to keep their assets close to their hands. They want to keep everything within their wallets, in their chests, and liquid staking tokens is probably one of the best ways to do that. So well done, Sanctum.
Well done, Sanctum. Worth mentioning, I was holding up the Seeker earlier. There is a Seeker app, and I believe it's 8.01% variable APY on staking through that app. Super simple. Go and check that out if you have a Seeker and you are one of the many Solana DeFi enjoyers who are looking for simplicity, as Finn mentioned. Now, State of Solana in a tweet. Disclaimer: this is gonna anger you if you ever traded or held meme coins, or if you're still holding a massive bag of meme coins because people like Ansem told you to. This is really going to get under your skin. Finn, Fabiano with a banger tweet as a result of this new live stream, by the way, that Ansem and FaZe Banks have launched. People are very frustrated, but I think this really captures that frustration. What are we looking at?
Yes. So for anyone who didn't see the news this morning, Ansem came out and he said he was buying Sol at $1.50, and the last time he sold was around $2.60. He's responded to some of these tweets, and it seems like he's got some receipts. I don't know. I haven't looked into it too closely, but Fabiano.sol has come out with his tweet. Do you really trust a guy who says he sold Sol at all-time high when these were his targets? So huge list here of meme coins that never quite got as high as Ansem claimed. Yeah, that's what's happening in Solana. That's the vibe of the day. Do we want to be trusting Ansem when he's been off before? I don't know. But also shout out to Fabiano. Fabiano, I think we were saying this before we started the stream, that I think you're the most tagged creator in the State of Solana tweets. So well done. Keep doing what you're doing. Love to see it.
Yeah, shout out to him. Those targets.
TB, you were deep on the trench side of life when this. I mean, I remember holding a majority of the tickers that you're seeing there on screen, and I never once thought that those targets were reasonable. I mean, $100 billion is just it's an insane amount. But do you recall what your sort of gut reaction to this post was, seeing it, and are you equally salty as some of the commenters now that it's being resurfaced?
You know, I mean, they just look hilarious looking back at them. But I mean, at the time, it was like, hey, meme coins can go way higher than you think, and a lot of them were, right. I think when it comes to Ansem, it's like he was turbo bullish Sol at the bottom, right? Like he was like one of the few people. Like sentiment was pretty low when Solana was down to like, you know, $8, $10, $15, and then he came out. He's like, hey, you got to own at least 1,000 Sol. Start buying some meme coins, start doing this, check out what's going on under the hood. So he did a lot in those early days, I think. And then he just took it way too far with meme coins. Like I think he just made a ridiculous amount of money with Whiff, and then he just started, you know, bull posting everything to the moon. I mean, Mother going to billions of dollars. I mean, I don't think Iggy was going to do that. Like, I don't think he even really believed a lot of these, but I mean, I also couldn't really watch that show. I had to turn it off after a little bit. So, you know, I don't know. I think that he nailed some of like the big trades. So, I mean, I think that he does like, you know, have a good analysis of a lot of things, but I mean, he also took it just so far with meme coins that it was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Finn, same question for you. Did any of these numbers at the time seem reasonable? I mean, 100 billion, start there. Did you ever think that's within the realms of probability?
They never seemed reasonable to me. It could have happened and nobody would have been surprised because that's what the meme coin euphoria was. But I don't think at any point I would have looked at Mother and said, yep, that's a $5 billion asset. Look, the timeline loves sensationalism. I think that's what this was.
Yeah, I will round off this segment of the newsletter discussion by saying we spoke to Hasib, who's always full of hot takes, and we interviewed him. I want to say this is after Breakpoint 2024, so maybe it was early into 2025, and we said celebrity meme coins, what's going to happen, where are they going to go? And he specifically singled out Mother, and he said, look, it's, you know, time will tell, but ask me the same question 12 months from now, and let's look at the market cap. And here we are. And I think, yeah, the numbers speak for themselves. We're looking at, what is it, a 1 million market cap, so down over 99%. It's it's sad if you did get burnt in this. I hope you didn't. I hope you were also around for Ansem's calls earlier on in his sort of calling career when he was saying you should be bullish Sol and own 1,000 Sol. You probably did really good on that trade. But celebrity meta, don't fall for these things. And I hope the lesson has been learned. Now, that is the week in Solana. It's been a big one. Foundation's growing cross-chain charity mode, which we love to see, being the good guys following the Kelp DAO exploit. Jito, obviously, shipping some insane critical infrastructure upgrades around BAM. Meta choosing to dip their toes back into payments, doing it on Solana with USDC this time. Solana RWA is at an all-time high of $2.5 billion. We love to see it. Genuinely, a lot of sort of green shots in an otherwise brutal month for the entire industry. $635 million hacked across DeFi. Single worst month ever. So we love to see it when these bullish headlines do appear, and it makes us think that maybe May is shaping out to be a much better month. Now, next Thursday, we are back with another banging episode of The Big Picture. We're going to be joined by Mike Dudas, along with Hasib. He's also a master of hot takes. So I'm curious to ask him about the pump.fun story that we discussed today. We're going to ask him about Circle, about Tether, about the ongoing stablecoin dominance battle that's brewing on Solana. Super curious to hear what he says. And if you do have any questions you'd like to ask Mike Dudas directly, then let us know. Now you have until Thursday, or join the live stream and ask him directly on Thursday. Curious what your questions are going to be. Finn, Thomas, thank you both for keeping us all informed. Appreciate it as always, and see you next week, hopefully after a weekend of green candles.
Thanks again, fellas.
Yep. Thanks all. Talk to you guys later.